We're back. We're back again with more Live from the Heartland, and we were just listening to, who were we listening to? Tom, you
We
got
were
the
listening to
earphones.
Corky Siegel with a little bit of maybe Will Tilson in there. I'm not sure who the high voice was. And that's from his April release of a new Chambers Blues thing. But this week, March 6th, at City Winery, in benefit for Common Cause, and we have with us here today Brian Gladstein to talk about what is Common Cause such that you would attract Corky Siegel to your annual benefit.
Isn't Corky great?
Oh,
Corky loves Common Cause.
Yes. Corky actually is one of our board members here in Illinois and has really been a core in kind of reestablishing us here in Illinois since 2012. So what is Common Cause? Common Cause started in 1970 by John Gardner, a Republican. So we are a nonpartisan organization, and it is surprising to many people to think that a Republican started Common Cause. And there's a Republican that also created Medicare. So you can imagine a Republican these days creating, if you imagine a Democrat federally creating.
I remember
a
liberal
social program.
Republicans.
Yeah.
I don't think John Gardner would recognize his Republican Party today.
Amen. So Common Cause is a democracy organization. We really got started around the Watergate era, holding power accountable. You might know there was a president during that time that needed to be held accountable, just as we are finding ourselves in those same days right now with the current administration in Washington, D.C. So we hold power accountable. We work on issues ranging from voting rights to money in politics, to media reform, to ethics and transparency, to redistricting, all about preserving democracy and what's happening in the streets. We have 35 organizations across the country in 35 states. Hopefully we will get to 50 soon, in which we have about 700,000 members that are active and engaged and organized on the streets around these issues to really create a democratic system that we believe in.
Brian, you come out of Indiana. Did you grow up there?
No, I actually grew up here. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago. But I did go to IU in Bloomington to learn about public affairs.
And how did you get involved with Common Cause?
I did about 20 years of social justice organizing in Chicago. I did work in Pilsen and in public housing. One of my mentors, Chewy Garcia, helped create Pilsen Alliance back then with a lot of other really amazing people. And I just realized, working in public housing, working in Pilsen, I experienced head-on what machine politics is really like, and that we need to change the system. We can work on affordable housing, we can work on healthcare, we can work on public housing. But at the end of the day, if we do not change a broken system that is connected to patronage and does not really serve the people on the ground, we needed to really create that change. And so I saw Common Cause as an opportunity to really build out a social justice movement, build power, and to create democracy so that we can win on those issues that matter most to us.
So let's go to national a little bit, and we'll come back into the local to get Dan Biss back in the conversation here. But did you ever expect when the new regime came in they'd be this ethically challenged already?
I mean, I don't think anyone's surprised, right? I think it's probably worst case scenario. I think that every day, right, there's another scandal, another comment, another accusation from a tweet. And in a way that we thought maybe it would stop, and that was just a campaign, and we realized they can't control themselves. I think that, what is happening now is a huge problem. We have barely ever gone after any of appointments as in our 46-year history, but we oppose strongly the Sessions appointment for his attack on voting rights and his connections to racist organizations and comments throughout his professional life. And now, after what we have just seen over this last week, Common Cause was one of the first organizations to say he needed to resign before politicians in D.C. actually did. And so things are in a tough position, but I am also really encouraged by the hundreds and thousands and to millions of people across this country who are organizing, who are marching, who are holding accountable this administration, and Common Cause is out there in front with you.
How much traction do you think the getting Sessions to resign thrust has at this time? There's some people who are saying, well, maybe that's going too far. You know, recusing himself was a good step, but there's also a lot of push for him to resign.
I mean, you know, an attorney general needs to not just recuse, he needs to be a leader on civil rights. And I think that there is too much doubt of what happened, and there's no way that he can be the leader that we need in that position. And so I think it is important that we hold him accountable. We hold this administration accountable. And you know, I'm not in Washington, D.C. I'm not in those closed rooms, so I can't tell you whether I think that is going to be successful. What I know is successful is that there are people that are watching in ways they never watched before. I know people who I talk to who've never been politically active, who are now politically active, who are donating money to like ACLU and Common Cause in a way they never have before. That's the spirit that needs to be taken up, and we will do that at every moment that we need to.
Your advice for sustaining that spirit in these times? I mean, this has been a real active 6 weeks, or however many, but you know, those of us who have been in the movement, say, so to speak, full time, are used to that kind of ongoing, persistent thrust. But we have a lot of new people in, and how do you think we will sustain that and bring us to the glory land of more victory?
So I think we need to do a few things. I think we need to continue organizing the marches on a continued basis. I think we need to be able to respond quickly and rapidly like folks did at O'Hare Airport a few weeks ago, within a few hours. That I think can be sustained if people are being educated and understanding and staying civically involved. I think that there needs to be more than that, right? Holding a sign in the street is important, but it is not change. Change happens when people get involved politically, get involved with getting elected officials there that represent them correctly, and creating real change in terms of policy. And that's what Common Cause does. So working on nationally, looking at redistricting reform, or changing so that every vote counts in a presidential election for the popular vote, which we are working on a state-by-state compact for. Working on voting rights reform, like we are here in Illinois, on automatic voter registration, and on money in politics, where we are seeing billionaires who are controlling the system and PACs on both sides affecting stuff that really matter to everyday people. And we need to have fair elections in Illinois, like we have introduced at the city, and just a few weeks ago with Senator Biss, we introduced it at the state level for small donor public financing. So getting involved in those very specific pieces, and then also supporting groups financially, like Common Cause and ACLU, who are going to litigate, Planned Parenthood, all of our organizations together, we can sustain this for the future and for our children, and we have to.
In an era of billion-dollar presidential campaigns, which of course was Barack's accomplishment,
Oh man.
and then alongside certain Supreme Court decisions, like Citizens United, isn't this sort of uphill mountain that the boulder keeps rolling back down when you try to do any kind of campaign finance reform, when in fact the billionaires seem to have taken over? How is a regular Joe or Jane in the street ever going to be able to compete or get their voices up above the fray when there's just all this money flowing through, with all the reforms and everything else that you've tried to do over the years?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're working on small donor public financing. We think it'll make a huge difference, like it did in New York and Los Angeles. The fact that Chicago, one of the three major cities, does not have a public financing system, let alone Illinois, is a huge problem. And it provides an opportunity for elected officials who don't have the opportunity for the big money or can self-fund like our governor to be able to run an effective campaign. It also increases.
Hey Brian, this is Daniel.
Yeah,
Can you tell us what the real impact has been in New York and LA of having that system in place?
Good question.
Yes, thank you.
You could be a co-host anytime.
So it has helped with what I was just saying in terms of folks who want to run, who are from a community, who have a desire and a leadership quality to run, but aren't connected to big banks or connected to big lobbies or super PACs. And by knocking on doors and talking to people, we're small donors. So the way it works is it's a 6-to-1 match. So for every dollar up to $175 will be matched by a fund. But you agree not to take more than $500. So you're not taking any big money that can have influence on your decision of public policy, but you're listening to people in the community. So one of the effects is you're not beholden to big corporations or billionaires or the ultra rich. At the same time, if I get my door knocked and I'm giving somebody $25, yes, they're not making decisions of public policy, but now I feel they're my candidate. I feel like I am engaged. I'm more likely to vote. I'm more likely to go to a meeting that Senator Biss or someone else calls. And it increases civic engagement, which at the end of the day, getting back to the question, Michael, that you said in terms of how do we sustain this, it's about civic engagement. It's about moving from historic low turnout rates. We are the lowest voting turnout rates in the last few years since World War II. And yet we say we have a true democracy. That is not democracy. We need to change that. So there are ways that money in politics can be had, even though we have a Citizens United uphill battle in front of us.
Brian Gladstein or Daniel Biss, speaking of money, Oprah Winfrey came out talking about, if all these rich guys can win and it's all about the money, maybe she will run. Your take on that? Anybody?
I mean, I just think that the qualification for running shouldn't be your bank account. Maybe there will be some candidate for some office at some point who is running on the merits and also happens to be rich. We shouldn't ban that, but it just shouldn't be what we're looking for. And I want to just double down on what Brian said, because this is really important. Tom, your question is so important. Most people I talk with feel just like you, that, dude, it's futile. We're not going to be able to really do anything about these problems, so why are we worrying about it? But Brian's right. In New York City, where they have this small donor match in place, it works. Their city council is more diverse. Their city council is younger. Their city council is people from more different backgrounds and less of their own personal wealth. It actually does the job it's supposed to do. It's consistent with the U.S. Constitution, even under the disastrous Citizens United decision. And it could be implemented right here, and it would really help. It would really change things.
See, I actually think that voters are smarter than they are given credit for. They're just,
Totally agree.
They've given up on the fraud and the corruption that comes with money.
That's right, and so you have to do a few things. First of all, you have to provide a real different vision, and then you have to have a system that at least gives the typical voter and the small donor a fighting chance. And that's what the small donor match system does.
If I can add one more little story in New York. So in I think it was Brooklyn. I remember it was Brooklyn or Bronx, but there was a campaign for years on childhood lead poisoning, right? Something that is really affecting our children in low-income communities, especially. And they organized and they organized, and they weren't able to get any headway. And then they made a decision that they were going to run a candidate using the small donor public financing that came from the community, that cared about small donor cared about lead poisoning prevention, and they won. And then they were able to get all their demands met. So when it comes to organizing in communities and thinking about social justice, a small donor public financing doesn't exactly sound like a really exciting campaign or issue, but it really is. It matters in the lives of people that are living in our neighborhoods. And so I just want to make sure that this is a social justice issue.
And I'd like to localize it in terms of a small campaign with small money, which was our charter freeze referendum. We had an alderman who said it was a moot point once we finally got on the ballot. They challenged us the first time and won because of signature issues. Another way we suppress voter opinion here in the state is making it really impossible for any kind of citizen initiative to actually get on the ballot. But we managed, second time around, to get it on the ballot, and even though the alderman declared it moot, we won with over 60%. We have a benchmark to use to hold up. Now, if the alderman a year later is trying to do it again. Now, this is a guy who's been on trips to Turkey for one of the charter school operators, and doesn't see that as corrupting in his attitude towards what's good public policy around public schools. So I think the implications are not just in the Big Apple out in the East Coast and what they were able to get going on, in their city council, but what could really happen here that we're not used to because of the way the local machine has operated over the years. And yet, you guys keep pushing along. You are not discouraged by this, and I applaud you for that. What would be the best way to try to break through? I'm trying to move now off the national back into the state. We're really at this stalemate. Everyone's kind of throwing up their hands, but there's still time left in this spring legislative session. And is there stuff you can suggest to voters to try to get the General Assembly off the dime, whether it's on campaign finance reform or some of the issues down the road around redistricting, or even just now trying to get some kind of budget, modest revenue reform going?
So I'll mention three real quickly and then hand it to Senator Biss. So one is automatic voter registration we are working on. So Common Cause was successful in passing online voter registration, same-day registration in the last few years. And now we're working on automatic voter registration, which will bring over 1 million people into the electoral process. And we got bipartisan support for it last session. The governor vetoed it. Daniel talked about the numbers in the House. We get 15 House Republicans and 13 Senate Republicans to vote for voting rights, which is not something that happens often. They flipped when campaign finance money by the governor went to a lot of those contentious races, and the governor messaged out that you do not override any veto. And there is a correlation with that, in our mind, to the campaign finance money and their AVR. And we lost by four votes in the House. And that's what the number we're short of in terms of Democrats and Republicans. So we are working again with Senator Menard, who's our sponsor in the Senate, and Representative Gable in the House to pass that. That's one thing that people can get involved in. Go to commoncause.org/Illinois. A second is money in politics, is the public financing we just talked about. Senator Biss is our key sponsor, and we will be working to get that through the Senate this session. And the third, you talked about redistricting. We believe that it would be really smart to do a state-by-state compact where we had 2 or 3 red states and blue states together do redistricting reform like we were able to pass as Common Cause in California for an independent commission. And there is a bill by Kelly Cassidy and Kwame Raoul that is being worked on right now or has been proposed. And so we will be working on that as well. So those are 3 ways that people can get involved in Common Cause, be active, and make some real systematic change.
And I would just say, on whatever the issue is, when it comes to state government, get involved, get organized, get a group together, and then make specific, loud, aggressive demands. The truth of the matter is that state government has existed pretty darn close to under the cover of darkness for a very long time, which means that most legislators kind of feel like they can get away with anything. This is a moment of activism, which is an opportunity to push state legislators in a real way. So get a group together and make a specific demand. Don't just say, hey, we ought to have a budget, because everyone knows we ought to have a budget. Say, we ought to have a budget that does this, this, and this, and I want you to vote on it by April. And I think that with the kind of energy that I see out there, there's a chance to really move the legislature, but it's going to take a concerted effort.
So here's another one of these technical issues behind the scenes that I think has more impact than people realize, and it speaks to equity issues as well as a more informed citizenry, and that is threats, as I see it, to net neutrality. Brian, can you explain to our listeners what do I mean by net neutrality, and why is this such an important hidden tool that we don't use well in this country?
So, Common Cause worked really hard during the Obama administration to pass net neutrality reform, and we were able to pass that. There's a real concern that you have big corporations that are able to kind of control the messaging that is going through the airwaves, both through radio and through TV and internet. And right now, from the appointments that we have seen in D.C., it's under a threat again. There are proposals, for example, to say you're going to pay by minute for your internet service at home. So just take a minute and think about what that would actually be for communities and what that means for low-income folks. It means that it is basically creating a tax in which the internet may be only used for those that have resource in terms of money. And so we will be combating those type of attacks, and we need real net neutrality. And this attack on the press, the attack on our freedom of speech, is probably the most scariest thing. We haven't really talked about it here, but it is the scariest thing that's coming out of DC right now.
What's the issue about net neutrality? We have to pay for phone service and for electrical service. What's the problem with having to pay for internet service?
Well, the word neutrality is really, really important here. The way the internet works with net neutrality is any one packet of information has the same status and priority as any other packet of information. Your internet provider can't say, hey, you're going to have to pay extra to get progressive news information, but Fox News will come for free, or Fox News will come faster for free. That's one example. You can't, the notion of a neutral internet allows small voices, diverse voices, and voices from unusual corners of the country and the world to have an equal shot at being heard on the internet. Once you get rid of that, there's the opportunity for corporate control or government control over who has the opportunity to have their voice heard on the internet. And considering that the internet could hopefully be a positive democratizing force, the notion of allowing corporate control over what gets to be sent by whom, when, and how fast is very scary.
I'm going to bring up another thing that the governor seems to be for, and try to get your opinion, both from Daniel and Brian. Term limits. What's your take on term limits? Because I would think if you had a Daniel Biss as your senator, you probably wouldn't want to, turn him out because he's been in too long.
It's kind of you to say that. I mean, you'll have to ask my constituents what they think.
Or Jan Schakowsky.
We may have a chance to ask them in 2018. Here's what I have learned about states that have term limits. What happens is there's a constant churn of who's in the legislature, but you know who doesn't change? The lobbyists and the staff. And because the legislators have less institutional knowledge, the lobbyists get more control. And so I think that's a real problem. On the other hand, I do think that having Senate President or House Speaker serve for decades and accrue more and more and more power while only being accountable to the voters in their own district is a real problem. So to me, the way to split the difference is to limit how long you can be Speaker or a Senate President or a Minority Leader, but don't limit how long you can actually be in the legislature. When I first joined the legislature, I put in a constitutional amendment to do just that, to say you can only be Speaker for 10 years, you can only be Senate President for 10 years.
How did that go over?
Well, it turns out that because of the problem I was trying to solve, the bill didn't move too fast.
Brian Gladstein, you have a big event on Monday, your Champions of Democracy annual benefit. That's where people get a chance to hear Corky Siegel. I bet there's still some tickets available for City Winery. Who are you honoring, and what is this event about?
So it is our annual event. We do it at the City Winery. Doors will open at 5:30 on Monday evening, and there are still tickets available, and you can go to commoncause.org/Illinois, or go to call 312-372-2422 for tickets. We give out Champions of Democracy awards every year. It is a very competitive process, and this year we are excited about our 4 honorees. One is Senator Andy Minar for being our sponsor and champion on the automatic voter registration bill we talked about a few minutes ago. Also Representative Teresa Ma, who served on our Common Cause Illinois board here and was a big advocate for same-day registration when she worked for Governor Quinn, and being the first Asian American representative seems like a worthy person to honor. We are also honoring Trevor Potter. If people don't know the name, they probably know who he is. He was the lawyer for Stephen Colbert when he kind of ran for president 4 years ago. A Republican that's very much supportive, though, of campaign finance reform. And Wendy Fields, who works for a group called Democracy Initiative, which is building a movement of unions, community organizations, religious groups, and democracy groups to solve the problems across our country.
And let me just point out that on the Common Cause site is this very nifty Find Your Legislator feature to follow up on Dan Biss's comment about being in touch. You can find out if you're not sure how to get in touch, go to the Common Cause site, and there's a little feature there where you can find your legislator. I want to thank Dan Biss and Brian Gladstein for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Heartland.
And do not forget that March 8th is International Women's Day,
Yep.
and there will be plenty of activity. Sisters, right on, move us forward.
And as no one brings up some closing music with Taj Mahal and Ry Cooder, Michael, you want to?
I want to let you all know that next week we are scheduled to have Norm Stockwell, the publisher of the Progressive Magazine, a longtime journal out of Wisconsin. And we also look forward to having Flint Taylor from the People's Law Office filling us in on what's going on in prisoner land, etc. And we encourage you all to do good in the world because the world needs all the good that you do. All power to the people. Over and out.